Hi there, this is Shauna from the Foil Fox. Thank you so much for joining me. Today we're going to be creating an alcohol ink background and flowers. The one I'm going to be demonstrating is the one on the left. I did the other one earlier, the pink one earlier. You'll see that later on. We're going to start out with these 6 alcohol inks and some alcohol ink paper, especially designed for these inks so that it doesn't absorb into the paper but it lays on top. You can also use Yupo paper. Some people use glossy paper just like for photo paper. I don't find that very satisfactory. I find it still grabs, so for better success that's what I would use. So here I had added willow, which is the green, and then the cloudy blue. And then you saw that I took that eyedropper and I was sprinkling something on there. That happens to be 99% alcohol, and I just put a little bit on there to make it a little bit more fluid. If you want to have more of a blotchy look, then add more alcohol. So I put in some blues and some greens, kind of putting in where I thought the stems and the leaves might be, and a little bit for the sky, and now I'm adding in for the flowers. This is using that sunshine yellow, and this is a very abstract type way of doing art. You have to kind of just let it go with the flow. Here I am adding the sunset orange, and I've just figured out, well, I'm going to put 4 flowers there. Normally I do them in 3s or an odd number, but this just seemed to work. And so I keep adding the orange and the yellow. I just added a little bit more yellow to expand that. And you'll see, again, I added the orange. I'm just going to play with this back and forth until I get it the way I want. And the same thing with the blues and the greens. Here I'm adding some aqua. The aqua is a bright color, a color blue, and I really like it. It kind of livens it up. The cloudy sky, which is most of the blue that's on there, is just a softer blue. So to spark it up a little bit, I added the aqua. So I'm back with the orange again, just to get that nice center. That's what I'm looking for. And I'm pronouncing those leaves and stem area a little bit more too. So soon I'm going to call this good very shortly. Now the one thing about alcohol inks is I want to mention to you, if you've never used them, work quickly. And you can't really think much about it. If you let it dry, and alcohol inks dry very, very quickly. If you let it dry, then it adds kind of a crusty area. So if you don't like that and you want it to be smoother, then you need to move really quickly. You can sort of see where it's a little darker on some of the edges. That's because it started to dry. Well, this is almost done. And then when this does get done, what I'm going to do is that I want to draw my flowers over the top, but I don't want to commit myself to going right to that. So what I did is I photocopied this, and now I'm taking my pens and I'm just going to draw these out and just see how I like it, and it will give me an opportunity to tweak them if I want to. I am using a Manicaca pens by Zig. This one is the medium brush. This is what I use for the centers, and then I'll use the 2 and the 5 also. So you can see I'm just going to start adding. Now that I've got the centers, I'm going to switch to the 2. I did the brush for the center, and now to the 2, and I'm just doing the petals. Now to keep some symmetry, because I am no artist, I try to do a few petals in one area and a few in the other, sort of roughly keeping to having them be in that 12, 3, 7 o'clock area to 9 o'clock, just to kind of give me a little bit of symmetry, and then filling them in. Again, this is just my practice. I can just get an idea if I like it. If I don't, then I can change it before I actually go right to my the background that I just finished in alcohol inks. You can see it there just waiting for us on the right hand side. So this is the final flower, and you can see some of the petals I want to go underneath, so I make sure that the line doesn't go over the petal of the other flower. I stop and then start again. That gives the illusion that it's underneath. So I'm adding in the stems very quickly. Don't make it a science. You don't need to. It's really kind of an abstract look, and that's what you're kind of going for. So now that I kind of finished that, and I was happy with it, I have it there on my right. I have it there as a reference, and then now I'm going right to the actual background. Now, I personally like to draw it, and then I like to go to the original piece, but I don't use it too much for a reference because I don't want it to get too contrived. I do want my creativity to kind of take over, because if I think too much about it, for some reason it just doesn't work out as well for me. I don't know if that's true for you, but if you struggle with it, then you might try it. So you saw that I used that medium brush pen, Manakaka pen. You can use the Pigma Micron pens if you prefer those. And I did that centers, and now with the number 2, I am drawing in each of these petals. Now keep in mind, like I mentioned before, I am not an artist by any stretch. So this is just something that I think anybody can do if you just jump in and don't think too much about it. I'm going to draw, and again you can see where I stopped because I didn't want it to overlap that one flower, because it wouldn't look right if I had intersecting lines. So here I'm trying to keep the symmetry, so I'm just adding in some petals where I think they need to be to just kind of give structure to the flower. And then I'll just go in and fill in the rest of them. Now, one thing I should have done, as you can see, I felt a little scrunch there on the edges, and that's because I didn't have a paper underneath me. If I had a paper underneath me, I would have drawn that petal all the way out over onto that scratched piece of paper. Just an odd quirk for me. I don't know if that's true for you, but you can see on my sample where I went over the borders, well, that helps me have a more symmetrical flower. For some odd reason, I didn't do it here, so I crunched those edges a little bit, but it'll be okay. Now, I took the number 5, my Manakaka pan, and I'm just drawing in the stems. And I'm not being very precise with them at all. Same thing with the leaves. And we're going to be putting a sentiment over that too, so it doesn't have to be that real precise. I've decided to go back in the flowers and just add just a few lines of detail. Then at the very end here, I'm going to go back with my medium brush pen, and I'm going to add in some little detail in the center. Just as soon as I get that last leaf in. You can see I thought, oh wait, I got to get those little bit of dots in there just to give a little bit of detail. So now that that is finished, I'm going to go and I'm going to create this sentiment. Since this is a completely just my own art, I decided that I would handwrite my sentiment. You certainly can find a sentiment, a stamp that you like, and stamp it and stamp and or heat emboss it, and that will work out wonderfully too. I just decided to write it out because I wanted that kind of more sketchy look to it. And this, I'm using that number 2 Manakaka pen again. You can use the Pigma Micron pens too if you prefer those. And then I want to put some lines, a kind of a box around this, and so I'm going to use my trusty ruler. My most favorite ruler of all time is this one, which is a right angle. It's a C through. It's called C, the actual letter C, and then through. And that's really what it is. You can see through that there's a grid, and it helps you line things up. It helps you make them straight. You can see what's underneath. I absolutely love this. This is the one I always go to. So now I've drawn that box around it, and I'm going to just trim it where it will have a very small border around it. You can see there, I disappeared there for a minute, but I'm back. And I'm just putting a little tiny bit of white border. I'm going to trim off both of these ends, and then we will be good to go. I'm going to move from there. See, there it is. I'm going to move from there to doing a little skinny frame. Now, I love the new outside-in rectangle stackables by L'Enfant. They are great because it'll make a stitch line on the inside for the panel and a stitch line on the outside, so I can use the panel anytime. I'm not going to use it this time, but I can set that aside. And now I have a stitch line around this to use for the border. So you can see I marked that a little bit, and I trimmed those off, those two sides. And now we're all set to get this card put together. So I'm taping the flower panel onto a craft card base. Now keep in mind too, if you want to know all the supplies, I will have them listed on the blog, so you can just pop over there. There will be a link down below. So I'm going to add a little bit of foam tape to the back of this skinny frame, and it is skinny, so I'm going to have to trim it down. And this is a new foam tape that I haven't used before. It is a very nice foam tape. It's Express-It foam tape, but I usually use the Scotch foam tape, and that's not quite as sticky as this one. So you can see that my first experience with this was a little bit trying, but I finally get it there in the end. So you're gonna have to suffer with me for a minute while I struggle with it being really extra sticky. I'm going to just fill in all those little areas with little bits of that foam tape, and then peel off the release paper once I get that all going all the way around, and then I will put it in position. So there you go. I finally have stopped struggling with that, and I'm going to get that back, get that on so they'll just cover those edges. And there you go. I just love how that white border just makes the center panel just pop. And the flowers are so cheery, and the yellow and the oranges are great for fall and for just the end of the summer. So I'm adding a little bit of foam tape to the sentiment that I created earlier, and just kind of deciding where I want that. Then I'm peeling off the foam tape and putting that in position, and of course I have to do my fussing with it. So there we go. Here's a review again. It is all completed. And then also here is the one that I completed before with the pinks. And the blotchiness, by the way, is just putting a little bit more of the alcohol on there. So I thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe. Also, pop over to foilfox.com/blog for complete details on this and more photos. And also, you can go to our store at foilfox.com. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time. Bye.